His first state visit was back in 2019 when he visited Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. Normally, a leader would be invited back for tea at Windsor Castle, but far more significance being placed on this, and he's getting all the pomp and pageantry with this visit at Windsor Castle, taking place at Windsor because Buckingham Palace staterooms are being refurbished. But we saw how glorious it looked last week for President Macron's state visit at Windsor. So this is a real honour for Trump, very much part of the UK government trying to build those relationships across the Atlantic.
We're speaking a lot about Donald Trump this morning. Some good news on the horizon for the president. His second state visit to the UK has finally been confirmed. He'll be here from the 17th to the 19th of September. The King and Queen will host him at Windsor Castle, despite the fact that the King is understood to be concerned about the president's desire to invade Canada. But what else will the president be getting up to? Royal correspondent Sarah Hewson joins me now. Hi, Sarah.
Morning to you, Patrick.
Thanks very much for joining us. Donald Trump, quite the honour. A second state visit doesn't usually happen, does it?
The second fest, as he's described it, Patrick. And no, because there was a huge amount of fanfare around the announcement of this second state visit, and a lot of emphasis on the fact that this is unprecedented. You'll remember Keir Starmer handing over that
brandishing the letter in the Oval Office, yeah.
In the Oval Office, yes. A lot of symbolism there. All part of that schmoozing to President Trump. And he will be getting the red carpet treatment yet again when he comes over here. His first state visit was back in 2019 when he visited Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. Normally, a leader would be invited back for tea at Windsor Castle, but far more significance being placed on this. And he's getting all the pomp and pageantry with this visit at Windsor Castle, taking place at Windsor because Buckingham Palace staterooms are being refurbished. But we saw how glorious it looked last week for President Macron's state visit at Windsor. So this is a real honour for Trump, very much part of the UK government trying to build those relationships across the Atlantic. But a tricky one, as you said, for the King, given that he is also King of Canada and given President Trump's unwelcome overtures towards Canada.
Yeah, it's politically, as you say, hugely significant. And organising the trip and timing the trip have been perhaps the most sensitive aspects of it. I mean, the King would prefer this not to be happening quite so quickly. Privately, he's not going to say so publicly, of course. They differed on the timing. The King, very sensitive to the fact he's also head of state in Canada, doesn't want to look like he's lauding Trump or rolling out the red carpet while that sovereignty dispute is still happening. We know the King has sort of privately raised concerns with the government, but he has no option if the Prime Minister says, look, this has got to happen now.
Yeah, and he's been overruled by the Prime Minister, it seems. You're right, the King would prefer to kick this into the long grass and have this second state visit coming later into President Trump's second term. He wanted to have a private visit, perhaps in Scotland over the summer, and then talk about the second state visit so that President Trump would feel important. And we know that he likes to be made to feel important. He likes that ego to be massaged. But Downing Street very keen that this should be happening now. The date that has been chosen is significant. It's a 3-day state visit from the 17th to the 19th of September. What happens just before that? On the 16th of September, Parliament breaks for recess, for party conference season. And so it's unlikely that President Trump will be invited to address both houses of Parliament. And that gets around some awkward situations for the Prime Minister should there be a boycott by some of his MPs, which has been suggested.
Yeah, it's avoiding that embarrassment, not least embarrassing the King. Having overruled him, they don't want to put the King in an exposing position if there are protests on the Mall or, as you say, a protest or boycott by MPs in Westminster Hall. Ultimately, it's the King who might take some of the flack for that, and that's one thing an elected politician never wants to do. Just while I've got you, Sarah, we've been reading in the papers this morning a pretty seismic development in the long-running feud between the Sussexes and the rest of their family. Secret peace talks at a St James's Gentlemen's Club, where else? We're reading that a royal reunion could be on the cards between the King and Prince Harry if not the Prince of Wales. What do you know about that?
Yes, well, look, when Prince Harry lost his Court of Appeal case about his security back in May, he gave an interview in which he revealed that he was not speaking to his father, but it seems some tentative steps towards reconciliation may be going on behind the scenes because Prince Harry's communications chief in Montecito, Meredith Maines, and his UK PR chief, Liam Maguire, held a meeting with the King's private secretary, Tobin Andre, his communications secretary, Tobin Andre. They had a drink at the Royal Overseas League Club. And, you know, nothing happens by accident with the Royals. Let's look at what it styles itself as: an international organisation dedicated to friendship and understanding across borders. Well, we need some of that across these borders between Clarence House and Montecito and California, don't we, Patrick? So tentative steps described just as a casual drink, but certainly moves in a potential direction for some kind of reconciliation. It's not sure who initiated these talks. The King himself, of course, not involved. It's done at an aides level at this point. But you mentioned the Prince of Wales there, and that's potentially a sticking point as well, because the relations between the two brothers are at absolute rock bottom. The King, of course, has always said that his door is open to his youngest son. But as for Prince William, well, it doesn't feel like that at the moment.
No, it doesn't. But as you say, nothing happens by accident, particularly not a drink on a balcony in central London between those two warring camps. Let's see where we get to. But Sarah Hewson, you've got us up to speed on all things royal. So thank you very much for joining us on Times Radio this morning.
Shame on this country that we're accepting him for a second time. And as for Scotland hosting his golf courses, big shame on Scotland. I feel this way because he's a climate denier. He's telling lies about everything, and unfortunately there's a lot of people following him. It's very dangerous for all of us, not just those in the US, but us here in this country and all over the world. All the aid that he's cutting, you know, it puts a lot of people in danger.
I think we live in a global world. I mean, America is a huge trading partner. We can't just we have to welcome him in some way or form, regardless how we feel about his politics. So, yeah, I think he's like a big baby. You know, you got to give him his toys to play with, and if he gets the bragging rights. He's the first U.S. president to be asked back twice in his second presidency. That's good bragging rights. I hope that appeals to his vanity, and he makes a decision about Palestine and Ukraine. We're not in a place to cut America off. You know, we depend on them. They are our biggest, special relationship partner. So, it doesn't, irrespective of party politics, whoever is the president or the leader of the United Kingdom has to welcome the American president one way, shape or form. Whichever person the American people have decided is their representative, we have to, cozy up to him in some way, shape or form.
Fairly neutral, really. It's just part of big politics, really, isn't it? So he's always going to come, really, but not really much to say. There's more important things in the world to worry about than Trump coming here, really. It's a bit of a non-entity, a visit.